Let's welcome first-time superhero Noah Moseley. Today he will be presenting his session, Management Reporter Nifty Reporting Tricks. Please stick around after Noah's session for a live Q&A.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for DynamicsCon Virtual 2024 for my session with you. I've got a few slides I'll go through with you before I actually jump into the application. We are discussing a Management Reporter Nifty Reporting Tricks, tailored specifically for your financial statements inside Management Reporter. My name is Noah Moseley. I'm with the MSX Group. And if you need me after today's session or after watching this recording, my email is at the bottom there, noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. And a big shout out to the community for welcoming us into the show today. Glad to join the community. Thank you. So some basics about Management Reporter for us. Just so everybody will understand the basics here, Management Reporter is your financial reporting and analysis solution. It's not budgeting. It's not planning. This is for your financial statements, your balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements, trial balance statements. Very tailored for accountants. A little bit about the behind the scenes for the data for Management Reporter. All the report definitions that you build inside Management Reporter and generate, those are all stored in a SQL database, which is really separate from your GL database. On a separate database, could be the same server. Just want to let you know that it's out there all by itself. There is usually a second data mart that copies all your transactions in from your GL on a regular basis and gets that ready for reporting. So you probably have two Management Reporter databases out there on the back end storing everything. And it's really important to understand that because that is your, lets you know that everything is read-only. We are not pushing data back into your GL. You pull that data, you copy it from your GL into Management Reporter, you make any reports you want to build inside Management Reporter, run those reports. You're not changing any data back in the GL. Building reports, really easy process for us inside the application. We use building blocks for all the report definitions, row definitions, column definitions, reporting tree definitions, and then we tie those together into the report definitions. All those definitions are mixed and matchable and reusable. You can build one row definition for an income statement and use it in 5 different income statements, all the better to help reduce maintenance. And a little bit about at the bottom there, the applications that are involved with Management Reporter. There's a few different pieces that you deal with when you're working with this application. You've got Report Designer, which you use to build and maintain and generate all of your reports. You've got Report Viewer as an application, which lets you view all the reports that you generate, and which is also the library of every report you've ever generated from Management Reporter. And there's also a report queue that pops up every time you run reports. You can see how that report is being processed, and all those reports can also be viewed in the web viewers as well. And on the back end, Configuration Console, more of the integration side that IT handles for us. Let's jump over and talk a little bit about security for us. All of the security inside Management Reporter is based on Windows authentication. So whatever you log into your computer as when you go to work, all that controls security for your financial statements. You have 4 different user types inside Management Reporter: administrators, designers, generators, or viewers with different levels of access. Every person that you have, you grant access inside Management Reporter will have one of these roles assigned to them. Building blocks, all your rows, columns, trees, and report definitions, you can password protect those definitions so that other people can use them for their reports, but they can't change your copies. And you can also, if you want to make an external copy or backup of all those building block definitions, we can always export those to an external file as a backup, although you will have a SQL database backup as well. Some best practices for building reports. A few points here to bring up before we actually look at some report examples. Typically, when you're building report definitions, you've got a row definition and a column definition. Every report you build will need those 2 definitions. It doesn't really matter usually if you're building the row definition first, the column definition first. There are some instances where it does get a little bit picky about that, but not very often. When you're building reports, you are able to reference all your account numbers and any of your other dimensions or segments anywhere in the report definition. The rows, the columns, the trees. It's just a good practice to not duplicate that between those. So if you are referencing, say, departments in a column definition, don't reference a department again in the row definition. So it's usually when you're building a report definition, just reference those segments in one of those three locations and don't duplicate that. When you're building reports, sometimes you may have a lot of columns or rows that you need to pull in the balances and use in calculations. And at some point, you'll want to hide those so that they don't generate or show when you run the reports. But good practice is don't hide those until later. So build the reports, leave all those showing so you see the data that the reports are pulling to verify that those are working for you. And when you're finished building the report, then go back and hide those columns and rows. Account and transaction level details are available for any reports that we build inside Management Reporter with drill down to those levels. They do make the reports run a little bit slower. So if you don't need those levels of details, which we'll look at inside the reports in a minute, don't include those in the report definitions. Use wildcards and ranges whenever you're building report definitions in the rows, the columns, and the trees. Those are the asterisks, the question marks, or ranges. And the big picture for building reports inside Management Reporter, start simple, really easy reports, run the report, see what you get, go back and make changes. Now, when we go into the application, which we're about to do that now, I have got several different report definitions already built to give you some ideas for report examples you can build back at your office. And we'll also give you templates for these report definitions as well that you can take back to your office, update them with your chart of accounts, and then use them on your daily report building. We're going to look at reports where we have departments in our column definitions. We'll also look at reports where we have departments in our row definition. So easy to see how we can mix and match and move things around between any of our rows and columns of our report definitions. Sorting data inside Management Report is really easy for any column of data you've got: actuals, budget, dollar variances, even description rows or columns. We can easily build annual forecasts inside Management Report as long as you've got your budget or your forecast balances inside your GL, or we could pull from Excel spreadsheets as well. We'll look at the transaction level details. It also includes account level details. And for users, we'll look at user options and user groups. Using those groups and reporting trick security and report groups where you can run several reports all at one time. So a lot of great features here we'll look at. Feel free to jot down your notes as we go through these different reports inside Management Portal. We'll have a question and a answer section at the end of this recording. So I'll be glad to take those as we wind up the session with you today. So let me jump over to Management Reporter with you, and we'll start looking at these different report versions. All right, on my screen, we are looking at a particular report definition inside Report Designer. I'm going to start looking at this first one where we have different departments in different columns of this report. It's easy to put this together and really great showing us that we're not stuck with just having monthly balances in the columns or year-to-date balances in the columns and accounts in the rows. You can switch around anything from your chart of accounts into any part of your rows, columns, or trees. So for this report definition, I'm just going to go back to the top. I'm not going to click generate. I want to show you a quick little shortcut here. Right to the left, just to the left of generate is an icon that will open up the last time I ran this report. It doesn't go out and check for any new balances. It opens up the last time I ran it. It does save me a little time in the processing. So this opens up in our report viewer application. And for this example, I'm looking at typical income statement or row definition. Nothing special about the row definition. It's got the revenue header row all the way through net income. The column definition is where this example comes into play, where I have my different departments in different columns. So I've got sales in the first column with all their balances, and administration right beside that, then accounting's department numbers, corporate, and a total. All those are controlled in the column definition. So we're going to jump back to Report Designer. I'll show you that column definition and how I filtered out all that data by separate columns. So back in Report Designer, I already had this report open. I see a lot of people all the time going to the left-hand side for these buttons to find the column definition or the row definition and open it that way for the report definition. But if you've got your row report definition already open, you've got shortcut icons at the top to jump right to those rows, columns, or trees. So I use these icons at the top all the time. So I'll click this to open up the column definition, and we just have columns A through F that we're working with. G, H, I, and J are just blank. Don't worry about those. Description column, column A, we've got F, D columns for the middle four, pulling account balances for us. They're all actual balances for whatever year I run the report for, whatever month I run the report for, and the activity for those years and months. Now, if I did nothing else, each of those four columns would pull the exact same numbers for the whole company. But towards the bottom of each column, I have used a dimension filter to decide, okay, well, only certain balances should be pulled into different columns. So for column B, it only pulls balances that are posted to segment 1, which is department for us, 000. Administration, segment 1 is posted to 100. So those act as filters for each of these columns. So this is a great way to limit what data gets pulled into every column here. And if you double click on that dimension filter cell, your dimension window pops up, the same dimension window you would use in the row definitions. And you can use any of these segments as a filter for any column here. And there's several rows here. If you wanted this column to be segment 1 plus segment 100, easy to add those all in one pop-up box here. And this is easy to fill that in here. You'll have your whole chart of accounts listed as well, and account categories. Now, let me also mention this works great if all your balances are coming from one company. Sometimes, though, you have multiple companies that are pulling in balances into a single report. In that example, you would have to have a reporting tree definition. So dimension filter might not work that well for that example. You might need to go to the row for reporting unit, double click that cell, select the tree, and what part of the tree you are filtering data for. So two different ways of filtering data into these FD columns. Definitely try the dimension filter first. If you are needing a tree, you do have that reporting unit option as well. It's a great option there to filter out data by any of your departments or any of your other segments or parts of reporting trees into any columns of these reports. And I'm using an income statement as an example. You can build any other report definition off of your financial data, your GL data, and use these filters in those reports. All right, let's look at a similar concept for the row definitions. So I'm going to close out of a couple of tabs here. And on the left-hand side, I do have a report definition for departments by rows. Go ahead, open this example so you'll see what we're aiming for. Now, in this example, again, it's the income statement. We just have a monthly column in the middle, year-to-date column on the right. The filtering of department data actually happens in the row definition. So under expenses, I have all the expenses for my accounting department on one row. I have all the expenses for my sales department on a separate row. Same thing for administration, corporate, service, and consulting. So very similar concept to how we did it in the columns. Now we're doing it in the row definition. Now to handle that, I'll jump back to Report Designer with you. Just to show you, there's nothing special in the column definition. This is just pulling balances. Back in the row definition, our income statement, when I get to the expense section, then I break this into departments. So in column J, I am pulling in a range of expense accounts. Any account from 5,000 through all the 8,000s. And that is the same for every one of these rows. Now, if I did nothing else here to this row, all of these rows will pull back in the same balances for us. In any of these, you can double click in column J, and you can use a filter in segment 1. Just type those in, and now that row would filter out balances for that range of account numbers and department 100. And you can do the same thing for every row below there. Different department codes. Now, let me go back, take those out. This row was set up to handle filtering based on reporting tree. So in the last report, we had a column definition. We used dimension filters like we just did for this example in column J, but we also had an option for reporting tree filters, which is also being used in this report. So in column J, if we have the same account number in every row, no references to segment 1 or department, I am using a reporting tree in column D. So column D will let me filter out any row by any part of a reporting tree. Once you have your account number in column J, column D, I just double click. Pop-up box asks me what reporting tree I want to use as a reference here. I just say department, and then I get to select from the reporting tree, that's that department tree, which one every row should represent. So 2 different ways of filtering out our balances on the row definition that's in column J, which is by far the easiest. So definitely use that route if you can to get you started. But if you say have a reporting tree that you need because you're pulling in balances from different companies, you might need to use the filtering in column D by reporting tree options. And that's just a double click to bring up the tree options. So 2 great ways there to filter out data by your row definition, column J or column D. All right, let me close out a couple tabs here for us. Sorting data. Let's talk about that a little bit inside Management Reporter. So when you run a report, you can have that report generate and sort your data by any column in that column definition. So you can sort it by descriptions, so it's alphabetically or reversed alphabetical. You can sort it by monthly balances, year-to-date balances, variance totals. I have a report here where I am pulling in all of our expense account balances and sorting that from greatest to least. And then I'm breaking those totals into separate columns. So I'm going to use this expense analysis report for us. And I'll go here, open that report so you'll see which way we're headed. Now, for sorting data, you're going to be making changes in the column definition and in the row definition. You don't have to have a reporting tree, but you do make changes in the column and the rows. So for this report, I am pulling in balances for all my expense accounts and have a total at the bottom. I'm sorting all those balances from greatest to least. And then I have separate columns for anything greater than $30,000, anything less than $5,000 on the right, and then anything between that would be right here in the middle. So let's look at our column definition first. So when we look at the column definition, I do have some columns that are hidden to pull balances and then to help me figure out what should be in the middle column here. So here in the column definition, description column and column A, column B is the balance column that's just pulling in all the balances I need. Now this column does not show up. I set it to a width of 1. I couldn't hide it because I do need it to show up in order to sort that column of balances from greatest to least. So when I go to the row definition, you'll see that I'm telling it to sort my data by column B. And then the columns that do show up would be column C for anything greater than $30,000, column F, anything less than $5,000, and column E, anything in between those two. And these are all calculated columns that have formulas that are if statements to help sort out that data. So column B sorts everything from greatest to least. I'll show you that in the row definition as well. Column C says, okay, in this column, show me any balances that are greater than $30,000 from column B. So just pulling out those certain rows that have larger balances. Column F, a similar if statement pulls back anything from column B with less than $5,000. D is a hidden calculation, pulling anything greater than 4,999. And then column E is just the column that shows up, anything in the middle there between $5,000 and $30,000 with the difference calculation. Now the sorting all goes back to column B and the row definition. C, D, E, and F, those are just columns that are helping me put those balances in different columns. But it really does help to sort that data out and make it stand out better when you're looking at the report after it generates. Now, in the row definition, I'm going to tell it to sort all my data by column B from greatest to least. So let's go look at the row definition. In my row definition, I have a long list of all my expense accounts. And right now, it does not matter what order these accounts are listed in this row definition, because I want to make sure that I pull the balances. Now, what sorts the data is the very top row, row 50. I've got a sort code in column C for descending balances. And then after you select that sorting option from greatest to least or least to greatest or absolute values, column D asks us which rows here in the row definition we want to sort for. So I'm sorting every row from 100 all the way down through row 3670, which is my last account row, 3670. It does not sort my total row. So I stop at my last account row. And then going back to the top, my last entry on that very top row is in my column definition, which column of data am I sorting? And in column H, my column restriction, I just typed in the B so that it knows that I'm looking at the column definition, column B of the column definition, and sorting that column of data. So if you're sorting any data in the row definition, you have 3 entries to fill in. Your code for sorting, what rows you're sorting, and what column of data you're sorting by. Now, column C, let me also mention there are 4 sort codes for you. So if I double click in column C, I'll get my list of all my different options. The bottom 4 are for sorting an ascending value, descending value, or the same thing for absolute values with the A in front. So you have 4 different options for sorting data in the format codes for column C. So some great features there to give you this quick analysis of your expenses, greatest to least, and breaking those out between different columns. Again, if you have questions about this report, we'll take those at the last 10 minutes or so of this session with us. So just keep those in mind, and we'll field those questions as we get to that part of the hour. All right, let's look at forecasting data. So back in the Report Designer application, I do have an income statement that I am forecasting our balances for the rest of the year, our annual forecast. I'll open this up. And if I ran it for January. So if I open up and look at that report, I'll have actuals for January because that's the month I ran it for. And then all the future months will be the forecast or budget months. Let me just zoom in here so we can see this better. So I can see in January, actuals. All these are copied in automatically from your GL chart of accounts. Your budget data, all the future months, February through December. I have a calculated column on the right to add up the actual columns and the budget columns to give me the total 12-month forecast. So all this is handled in the column definition, nothing special in the row definition. We actually have all of our actual columns listed with like an if statement to figure out which columns for actual should show up, which ones should be hidden. Same thing for the budget columns. So we can go back to the column definition. I'll show you how that is used and where you put that conditional statement. So back in our column definition. So this report, we start off with actuals. I've got 2 rows of headers, which really they don't control the balances. They just are there to help us see what each column represents. I have the actuals, and even though it looks like the header for actuals is just in column B, it's actually spread across columns B through M. And whatever columns are hidden in the future, they don't show up, but it doesn't cause a problem for my header row. And if I double click the header for actuals, I can see it's spread across column B through column M. It's in a box, and it's centered justified. Now, all my actuals here, I have all those actual columns through period 12 even. The year is the word base, so it changes from one year to the next automatically. Period numbers are hard-coded 1 through 12. And for this report to figure out which columns of actuals should display and which ones should be hidden, we have a print control option. For every actual column, it's P is less than or equal to B. P is whatever period number we have typed into this column. So in column C, it's period 2. And the B is whatever month we run the report for, our base period. So it compares those 2 values. If the statement is true, this column shows up. And once you have the first one, you can copy that to all your other actual columns. And these are actually a pop-up box selection, so you don't have to type it. You can double click. There's a conditional print option drop-down list. I'm using the second from the bottom. Print this column only if the period for this column is less than or equal to the base period, whatever month you run the report for. Easy selection there. And once you have the first one, just copy across all the other actuals. Now that handles the actual columns for us. The budget starts in column N, same concept. Period numbers would be hard-coded. Usually the fiscal year is not hard-coded, but I have that just for an example here. Your book code would change to wherever you store your budget balances. I do have a conditional statement for all of the budget columns. It's kind of the almost opposite of the actual conditional statement. If this is true, this column shows up. So if the period for this column, which is 3 for column O, is greater than the base period I run the report for, this column shows up. Again, these options, I can double click in that cell, brings up the print control window for us. It's a drop down selection at the bottom of this window. I'm using the second from the top. And once you have the first, you can copy and paste that to all the other budget columns to the right. Works great there. The last entry here in column Y is for our annual forecast. It is a calculated column. That formula is a range from column B through column X. Now, when you have a formula for a column definition that has hidden columns, range calculations do not include hidden column balances. And I can't use an FD column for year-to-date for actuals or FD column year-to-date for budget because that just would not give me the right balances. You need a calculated column that says, okay, add up all the balances from the columns that show up. And you can't reference individual columns in this formula by letter code exactly like B plus C plus D plus E. If you do reference hidden column letter codes specifically, it picks up those values. So you don't want that. You want a range calculation. So it ignores the hidden values. So easy to pull that together for your forecasted income statement, actuals, all those actual columns. Use the print control as a conditional statement. Same concept for your budget columns, and a calculated total on the right to add the printing columns together. All right, some great features there for quickly pulling together an annual forecast. Another topic we want to look at were including actuals and transaction level, including account level details and transaction level details in your reporting. So let me close out of a couple of tabs here. And if I go back to one of my other reports, so these reports, if I double click on any row, it'll drill down and show me account level details. And if I also include transaction level details, I can double click on the account rows and get the transactions for those balances. Now, not every report definition needs this level of detail. You could always turn it off, which does help it run a little bit more quickly when you generate a report. But let me show you in the report definition where you turn those options on or off. Easy drop-down selection there for us. In any report definition, I'll open this one. If you want to include account level detail and transaction level details right here on the first tab, the report tab at the top, there is a drop-down list for detail level. You got financial account, and transaction. So if you just have financial, you will not have drill down to the account or transaction level details. You'll just have the first page summary, which may be all you need. But if you do want to turn on drill down to account level details, select the second one. And if you want the transactions for all that, you've got the bottom option as well. All right, so easy to turn that on and off for really any report you build inside Management Reporter. And for the transaction level details, you can also include extra columns of details, and that would go in your column definition. So let me jump to the column definition here. I've already got 3 extra columns on the right, L, M, and N, that are pulling transaction level details. Just widen these up for us. So column L is pulling transaction descriptions for any entries. Column M is pulling distribution references, and column N is pulling journal entry references. These are all set to auto-fit for the width. In order to get these selections right above it, the column type needs to be set to ATTR for attribute. And that's a drop-down selection. If I double-click on that cell, it is attribute ATTR. And then once you have ATTR selected, the next row down, you can double-click and pick anything from this list of transaction level details. Now, this does depend on your chart of accounts. So GP reports will have a different list than AX reports will have. So it depends on your chart of accounts, your general ledger, to decide what details you can include on these reports. And I only have 3 columns here for added, but you can add, I'll just use my arrow key on the keyboard. I can add as many columns to the right as I need to. Just select ATTR, double click the row right below it, pick the next option that I want to include for any rows here you want to, any columns, I mean. And typically once I have those selected, I'll just highlight and copy those entries into my header row so that you know what every column represents. So easy to include that transaction level detail for any column definition. These extra columns for ATTR, they do not show up until you double click and drill down to that level of details. So we saw that earlier when we looked at the report in the viewer application. We're running close on time here, but I'd like to talk about a little bit about security and report groups before we wrap it up. Security all starts in Report Designer with you. You got your security section if you are administrators. All your users may get copied in here from your general ledger, or you can add those here yourself. There are 4 roles for every user you add here: administrators, designers, generators, and viewers, so different levels of access. Typically, you make sure that the users are listed here. And then if you want to use them in security settings, I would put them into groups and then reference the groups in reporting trees or the library folders for security. So for groups on the left, you can make as many groups inside Manage Reporter as you need to organize your users any which way you need to. I've already made one for my admin department, my corporate department, sales department, accounting department, and our MR admins. And if I double click on any of these, it pops up. It'll show me the users that are listed in each of these groups. Accounting's got 3 different people. Corporate's got 4 different people. And just add those any which way you need to. Now, to use those group references for security, typically you'll go to reporting tree definitions. So if on the left, I go to reporting tree definitions. Let me look at department. Now, in your reporting tree definitions, any security settings would be in column L for unit security. Now, if you leave it blank, anybody who can get to this report can see every part of this report. They can see all the data for sales, administration, accounting, corporate, all the data. But if you want to limit who sees what parts of these reports, you can column L, you can double click, add your users or groups. I have my MR admin group. I'll add that first. Now, once you have the first list of your management reporter admins, I would copy that to all parts of the tree here. And then go back to the others, like for sales. I'll double click on the second row for sales and include my sales group. Same thing for accounting and administration and everywhere else. Now, column L would now start restricting user access. Anytime someone opens up the report that you've run, they can only access the parts of the reporting tree that you have granted them in column L for unit security. So a great way to control access to all the data in these reports. Build your users and user groups. Reference those groups here in the reporting tree definitions. It controls everybody's access to their data. All right. And the last thing I wanted to mention here, because I think I am coming pretty close to our Q&A section time here, would be report groups inside Management Reporter. So I'll close out of this window here. Report groups on the left-hand side. I've got 3 already set up. Report groups are a great way for us to group several reports into one definition and have them all run at one time. So for this group, I have 6 different report definitions. You can add as many different reports here as you need to. Change the date, click generate to have that run all the reports at one time. Those open up in a report landing page here in the web viewer. So every green tile is a separate report that was in that group. Easy navigation, one click opens up any of these 6 reports. If I want to go back to those list of the 6 reports, you've got the back arrow and then jump to the next one. Great way for you to have a list of reports, run them all at one time, gives you a landing page for your users to open this page. In one click, they open up their reports with just their data. Now, if you do report groups, that landing page with the green tiles, you only see the green tiles in the web viewer. So you would not see this page in the library application. So it's only right here inside the web browser for the green tiles. Now, each individual report you can see in the web browser, or you use the download button and jump and look at that report in the report viewer application. There's 2 different ways of viewing that data, the web viewer versus the report viewer application. That landing page with the green tiles, that's only available in the web viewer. So a lot of great topics here. I think I'm pretty close to going to our Q&A time slot here with you. I want to wrap it up with just a closing slide there with my email at the bottom, noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. So if you have questions after joining us today, email is the best way to get in touch with me. All right, so I think that we are going to open it up for questions and answers. All right. Thanks, everybody. I do have some questions I'll throw out there for us to wrap up this session with you about Management Reporter. So, and if you have stuff that you want to throw into the chat box as I go through these, feel free to. I'll be watching that as we close up here. Question about how many reports can you have inside Management Reporter? Are you limited to the number of reports? So no, you have no limit on the number of reports you can build inside Management Reporter. You can build one report. You can build 1,000 reports inside Management Reporter, and you can have as many different row definitions, column definitions, and reporting tree definitions as you need to. Everything gets stored in Management Reporter's SQL database. Those are pretty hefty, so feel free to fill those up. Of course, keep in mind, the more reports, rows, columns, and trees you build, the more maintenance you're going to have as a report administrator, like adding new accounts and stuff like that. But you can have as many of those definitions as you need to. The question is, where does Management Reporter get its data from? So when you run a report in Management Reporter, it looks at the Management Reporter SQL database for that data. So it pulls from there. It doesn't go out to GP when you run a report right at that time. It may go out to an Excel file and pull data from an Excel file into the report. So that's the only active link that it might go outside of MR to pull data. Now, the actual balances, the budget data, the forecast data, anything that would have been copied from GP, that is copied automatically in SQL from GP to Management Reporter, and then it's available for reporting. And that happens very often. So about every minute or so, it goes out to GP and checks for new transactions. Now, you could post something in GP, run a report right away, and it not yet show up in the report. So, but hey, just give it a minute. It'll catch those new transactions, and then you can run that report and see the changes. But yeah, and you are limited to where you can get data from. So it's very tailored. The data for reports only pulls from the general ledger tables and from maybe Excel files. Okay, it does not pull any data from other modules like fixed assets or human resources, payroll. It's just the geo data and maybe Excel files. Very tailored for that. And the most common types of data I would see pulling from Excel spreadsheets might be statistical data, square footage, head count numbers, stuff like that you want to have into the reports that you don't necessarily track inside GP as a unit balance count. Question is, how do you access MR from GP? So there is no link inside GP that says click this link and open up Management Reporter. So Management Reporter is a separate application. So you're going to find it on your desktop or on your cloud servers or on your terminal server at your office. It's outside of GP. You do not have to have GP running in order to open up Management Reporter. And there are, three things as an end user you would use for Management Reporter. You've got the Report Designer application. You've got the Report Viewer application for viewing reports. And then you could also access reports that have generated using the web browser. You also find those options under the Start menu for wherever you have those applications installed. Question about what are the big differences between the library viewer and the web viewer and the data that you're looking at? So between those two options, looking at any report that you run from Management Reporter, that report data is available for viewing in the web browser or in the library viewer. It's the same report that generates. It's not running twice. It's running one time, and then you just have two different ways of looking at that report after you run it. Navigation is different. The web browser, the drop-down options for the trees and export options are all at the bottom of the window there in the web browser. Whereas in the report viewer application, most of that stuff is going to be on your left-hand side for the reporting tree definition or the top of the screen for exporting to Excel or the printer, something like that. And if you're going to print reports after you run them, I would not print them from the web browser. I would look at the report in the report viewer application and print from there. You just have a lot more control of what prints from the report viewer application. And speaking of those two, the library viewer versus the web viewer, you can set either of those as the default viewer. So inside Report Designer under Tools and Options, there's a checkbox where you can say, you can tell Management Reporter which viewer you want to use as a default report viewer application. I prefer the library viewer. Your end users, people who are not administrators and they're not responsible for like printing a lot or exporting a lot of data, they're probably fine with the web viewer. But as a Management Reporter administrator, running reports, responsible for report distribution, I use the report viewer application all the time. Do we need system administrator role to create the report? So inside Management Reporter's Report Designer, you've got four types of users. You've got administrators that can build reports and run reports and handle security as well. You've got designers that can build and run reports as well. So if you're going to be the person that creates reports and maintains reports, you do have to be one of those two types of users in Report Designer. There's the other two options would be a report launcher or generator. They cannot build reports. They can only run reports someone else has built for them. They can change the date, but they can't build reports or make edits to the rows or columns or stuff. And then you have report viewers as well, who those users, they cannot even run reports themselves. They have to have someone else run it for them, and they can then open it up in the viewer applications. Thank you. Appreciate that comment. Always good to hear that people pick up some tips and tricks from these presentations, as I've been doing this for many years, so I plan to be doing it for many more. So yeah, if you have questions back at your office after this video or this session here, email is the best way to get in touch with me at noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. Okay, so I may be running up on the end of my time here. Do I have any more time left, or? Okay, I don't hear anything, and I don't see any more comments there. So I appreciate everybody joining me today. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great time here in this DynamicsCon. I do have more time. Awesome. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions there. There are some people who are looking at what do they do after GP. So one question was, does Management Reporter work with Dynamics 365? So Management Reporter does not exist for BC. So if you're going from GP to BC, you've got to find a different option for reporting. Email me. I'll talk to you about options for BC installations. In F&O 365, your Management Reporter reports can be used. They did bring over a kind of an equivalent application inside F&O for reporting. It's really Management Reporter. They dropped some functionality. They dropped the name Management Reporter, but you do have some reporting inside F&O. Let's see, I have some new questions that came in. So a question about Control O in Management Reporter to identify obsolete reports. I don't have Management Reporter open on my side, and I have not used Control O. You could look at your list of all your building block definitions and see inside Report Designer when those reports were all last used. That might be a good tip for seeing which report definitions were built like 5, 6, 7 years ago and really haven't been used since then. So that'd be one option there. Control O, that Control O may pull up that window for the list of when those were last run. I see that comment about copy and pasting into Excel and then sort your data there. But hey, that report I had with all the list of expenses and sorting it by the balances from greatest to least, you may be able to build that inside Management Reporter and not have to do all your sorting externally inside Excel. Have Management Reporter do all that sorting for you. Yep, thanks for the tip there. That Control O also shows you, in addition to when it was last used, who made it and when it was made. Thank you for that. Oh, I see where you said the Control O to copy that data into Excel and sorting it. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Another comment that there are different tabs for all of the building blocks. All the building blocks being the report definitions, the row definitions, the column definitions, and the reporting tree definitions. So all those building blocks in that list of what has been, when it was made, when it was last used, to help you sort out things that are, no longer part of your regular reporting package. Question about linking to the Excel data. Yes, you can link to Excel data in report definitions. It is kind of tedious. It is very specific in linking to a particular cell locations inside the Excel spreadsheets. So if you build a report, you link to those Excel cells or starting points for those Excel files. And then you go back in Excel and you add a row, you add a column. It does not know to update those definitions back inside Management Reporter. So that would be a manual process. You have to be very careful about making any changes in that Excel data file. And then once you make the changes in Excel, go into the rows and make the changes there as well, because it's not linked. It does not know to go out there and check for changes to rows and column additions in Excel. It just runs the report, goes to where we told it to originally, and checks from there.